Exactly.
Because they're just being told through their government
absolutely.
what is
Absolutely.
fact, and most of everything is North Koreans done it, right? They were probably the first ones to do it, and
first ones on the moon.
right.
And if you only have one source of information, that's the information that you know.
That's very true.
Yeah.
All right, well, I'm Bo Jensen. I'm the host of the Unknown Heroes podcast, where we hear compelling stories from the secret sacrifices of soldiers, veterans, and ordinary people. And today, I am joined by Chris Fields. He is a veteran of the Iraq and Afghanistan war. Chris was a Command Sergeant Major, got to make sure I get that right.
Yes, most definitely.
In the United States Army, had 2 deployments to Iraq totaling 30 months. So I'm assuming that was 2 15-month deployments. Okay. And then he had a 12-month deployment to Afghanistan. He served from 1981 to 2012, retiring from the United States Army after 30 and a half years of service. So I want to first off say how grateful I am, thankful I am that you're willing to sit down here. And thank you for your service to our country. It's really just an honor, first of all, to have you on my podcast. But also that I got to meet you because you don't know this, but I met you before you met me. And I can explain this.
Oh, please do.
All right. I actually saw you for the first time on the movie screen in the documentary Hornet's Nest. Mm-hmm. And we'll get to that here in just a second. But I can remember just thinking as I'm watching this, I'm like, that guy cares about people, cares about his soldiers. It was depicted so well to me in the documentary of what kind of person you were. And so when I was thinking about the concept of this podcast, I was like, I want to interview this guy. So anyways, I wanted to throw that out there, but I want to ask you kind of as we kind of kick this thing off, where are you originally from and why did you enlist into the United States Army?
Well, that's a kind of a secret, a real quick, close kept secret. I'm from the left coast.
Okay.
Originally from California.
Okay.
And at 17, I knew actually when I was, I don't know, probably about 6 years old, I knew that I was going to join the Army.
Okay.
My father served in Vietnam. I remember him coming home and actually leaving and coming home. And it was just a real kind of a somber time in the not only the nation's history, but growing up as a young boy, not having a father there during those kind of critical years.
Yeah.
And so I decided a long time ago I was going to join the Army and never turned around, never even contemplated anything else, truly, to be honest with you. So at 17, right off the beaches of Southern California, I surfed a little bit, I snow skied a whole bunch, and was kind of a little bit of a rough house, I guess. And so that's where I came from. And then, like I said, I never turned around. I kept on going.
So you enlisted in 81?
Yeah, 1981. I was 17 years old. My parents had to sign for me. My mother, it was not a question. But she did have one prerequisite. I had to be baptized.
Okay.
Yeah. But being baptized doesn't always.
Right.
So, and then my father, he was kind of my stepfather. He was kind of curious why I selected to go infantry. In fact, when I came home saying, hey, you know what, would you sign these papers? And he goes, you want to be a gravel agitator? What? I don't understand why you want to be an infantry guy.
Yeah.
And I think it was the adventure, wanting to jump out of airplanes. And, I always heard, airborne ranger. And so that's what I went in to do and enjoyed my time.
Where did you do basic training? So you joined at 17. When did you leave for basic training?
So I left June 14th, 1981. Got on a bus and went to the airport and flew into South Carolina. I had never been so hot and miserable my whole entire life. So I flew into South Carolina and I just cut my hair. It was hot. It was nasty. And then from there, went down to Fort Benning and then did basic training and then one station unit training, OSA training there. So
Okay.
infantry school.
So you went to infantry school, and that's where
Mhm.
most people that are in the United States Army infantry, they go to Fort Benning, correct, for basic?
That is correct. That is
Okay.
the home of the infantry or maneuver is what they call
Okay.
it now.
And so after you completed that, what was your first duty station?
So strangely enough, I was retained as a drill corporal.
Okay.
So
What does that mean?
basically, I maxed out basic training.
Okay.
And so you went to a couple of boards and they said, okay, you're going to stay here and you're going to be a peer trainer. So they frocked me. Basically, they give you rank as a corporal. And so I was the drill corporal, got him up in the morning, not a drill sergeant, not didn't wear a hat. So my mother always said, well, you just wanted to hang out at basic training for 2 cycles. Nobody wants that punishment, Mom. And then stayed there for the whole cycle, a whole nother basic training.
Okay.
And so my first duty station at that time, I had volunteered to go to a Ranger regiment, or well, actually it was battalions at that time, Ranger regiment. And General Glenn Coyotes, I was on a demonstration bayonet assault course team.
Okay.
And I said, he asked me if he could do anything. I said, yeah, I really want to drop my European contract and go to the Ranger battalion. And he says, no, you got to go there. So first kind of let down in the Army, but went to my first duty station was Berlin, Germany.
Okay.
The wall was still up.
Wow.
And I was selected to be on a guard detail that guarded Rudolf Hess, who was prisoner number 7 from the Nuremberg trials.
That is interesting.
Yeah, it was a great honor,
Yeah.
obviously, but more importantly, that was history.
For sure.
Yeah, because that Spandau prison was an old Prussian barracks, and then it turned into a prison itself. And so I just think they recently tore it down not very long ago.
So how old were you when you get to Berlin?
I had just turned 18.
18 years old.
18 years old, Berlin, Germany, wall up, crazy stuff.
I'm assuming this is 1982.
Yeah, that's 82, just on the end of 82. And
and the wall didn't come down until 89. So you were seeing where it was at that time people still trying to cross over from east to come into west Germany?
Absolutely. So we had one night we had an alert, and a Bulgarian either he was a full colonel or full colonel actually went and inspected one of the guard towers. So where our barracks were, Menarek Barracks, there was a canal, there was a housing area, then there was a canal. And he had gone up to the guard tower. He had inspected them, took their weapons apart, threw their weapons all around, told them to stay at position of attention, came down to the bottom. He knew where the mines were. He had a key to the gate, went through, swam the moat with a sachet of intelligence, whatever. I mean, it's way past 10 years, so I'm not telling you anything that hasn't already been reported.
Right.
And swam the moat, got on the other side, and sat there until we came and secured the area, and the special police that we had and went and ushered him off.
Wow.
So that was one. And then we had a couple other attempts while I was there.
Yeah.
But it was, pretty intense kind of place. You're 18 years old. You actually have Russian uniformed in your sector. They could go and they could drive around wherever they want because they're an ally. And then there was a few times that we were actually approached by agents. And at that time in the early 80s, one of the greatest or largest spy schools was just on the other side in Berlin.
Really?
And so they would come over on a free pass and they would try out their craft. And every once in a while, you kind of could tell. Sometimes you just couldn't because some of them were just observers. So it was really.
So these are KGB.
Well, I don't think there were probably some KGB. I mean, there was definitely KGB there.
Okay.
But this was like the FSU, but it was the East German.
Sure.
And then there was some other, multi-Warsaw national agencies that went to that school that would come over and try their craft. Berlin was a really hotbed.
And they're trying to recruit.
They're trying to recruit, gather information, just field craft, just testing it out. So it was kind of an interesting.
So you were approached?
Oh yeah, a couple times.
Wow.
Yeah, and so it was kind of you just ask them questions back, "Hey, are you married? I don't know. Are you married?" Just it was very easy for me to be not a nice person, for
Yeah,
me to be a smart,
that's
smart aleck.
interesting. And this
Yeah,
is at 18 years old.
18 years old,
How long were you in Berlin for?
18 months.
18 months,
Yeah.
and then you came back to the States?
Yeah, so I came back to a place called Fort Ord, California, which is
Okay.
closed down now. It's in Northern California, right outside of Monterey.
Right. Yep.
So another great location. I mean, I was never really gypped on the geographic location of any of my deployments or any of my stations. But in California, and from there, I really got to go to a lot of different places. I finally got to go to Ranger School and
Okay.
Airborne School, and went to a kind of a pre-sniper school there. They
Okay.
had a mobile training team that came out, so that was the first sniper school I went to, and then I went to the Army sniper school after that down the road.
Sure.
But from Fort Ord, California, we traveled everywhere. South Korea for
Mhm.
Team Spirits. We went to Honduras a couple times. That was a pretty interesting time. The
Mhm.
Contra affair kind of on the
Yeah.
tail end of all of that.
How long were you down in Honduras?
Twice for 6 months.
Twice for 6
Well, let's
months. Okay.
see. The first time was an emergency drill. We going down
Okay.
Operation Golden Pheasant. It was a pretty, yeah, yeah, pretty an interesting time though, kind of crazy. But
Mhm.
was really stationed with some great guys there that ended up going and doing a lot of great things. That unit was kind of a breeding ground for exceptional leadership.
Okay.
Yes, a lot of them. In fact, like at that time, I was a scout in the scout platoon. So
Mhm.
we had motorcycle scouts. So I was a motorcycle scout. I
What?
was an observer, a scout observer, and really kind of a fun, interesting time. Nothing
In
like
Honduras?
yeah. In Honduras, well, I wasn't on the motorcycle team at that time.
Okay.
I was
Okay.
before that.
Okay.
But some of those guys, just riding motorcycles all through Honduras, it was pretty interesting. Good
That
time.
is very
Yeah.
interesting.
And then came back home from there, and really kind of a dynamic time. I spent almost 8 years there, so we were
In
deploying.
California?
Yeah, in
Oh,
California, we
okay.
were deploying quite a bit.
Okay.
So Alaska, um, let's see, like I said, Korea. And
This
this
is
was
majority of the 80s, early
sure.
90s? Okay.
Yeah, and then I left for a short period of time,
Mhm.
and then came right back.
To Fort
So
Gordon.
to Fort Ord.
Oh, Ord. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. And then I went on the All Army shooting team for a good time.
Okay.
So I went through a whole season, is what they call it.
Okay.
So I shot it against the Marine Corps, against the reserves around the year,
Yeah.
around the kind of the military, all the
Okay.
way up to Camp Perry, Ohio, which is the Nationals.
Okay. Now, I don't know if you're allowed to talk about this or not, but I
Okay.
know that you went to Korea. Most
Hmm.
United States Army soldiers that go to Korea go to South Korea.
Right, right, right.
You actually got to go into North Korea. Are
That's
you
right.
allowed to talk about this at all?
Absolutely. Yeah,
All right.
absolutely. Yeah.
So, what year did you go to North Korea? I mean,
Oh,
most people never get to go to North Korea. It's
right.
so cut off from the rest of the world.
Yeah.
And you're one of the few people. I mean, I don't even know if you're probably the only person that I'll ever meet in my life that's been to North Korea.
More than likely, unless it's a national.
Okay.
Yeah, national that escaped.
Sure.
So, I was stationed in Hawaii.
Okay.
Again, I was in the scout platoon. I was a scout platoon sergeant.
Okay.
And they needed a guy. So every once in a while, they'll detail it out if they don't have enough radiomen or mechanics or whatever.
Mhm.
So they needed a AM radio operator. Well, I was the only one old enough to work that had a working understanding of the AM radio. So I was detailed over
Mhm.
to SILHI, which is the Central Identification Labs. Basically, if they find a U.S. service member anywhere in the world, they'll send them back to this facility, and then
Okay.
they'll test their DNA, they'll test the records, and that kind of. It's amazing how your training as a private will then kind of germinate into what it's supposed to be in the real world.
Sure.
So we learned how to, if you had a soldier who died in combat, you would
Mhm.
give, how they died, give a brief statement, 8-digit grid coordinates to that location, those kind of things. Well, all that information is collected at SILHI.
Okay.
So they will then go to certain countries,
Mhm.
places. So they've been everywhere. They found a buffalo soldier in um, a dry lake bed in like Utah, I think. And they actually exhumed him and took him back to Silhai. And I
Hmm.
think they identified him. So that's just how they're it's an amazing operation, phenomenal, and it was just an honor to be there. And here's why. In the very beginning, I told you that my father had been in Vietnam. Well, when he
Mhm.
came home, he had severe PTSD. There was a lot of stuff that came along with that.
Mhm.
And it wasn't until couple years ago that the circle had come full circle, me understanding, hey, wait a minute, I have, and now my kids are. So, trying to break that chain, but we can talk
Mhm.
about that a little bit later.
Mhm.
But watching the plane loads of or the plane load of MIAs, POWs coming home
Mm.
from Hanoi. I remember watching on TV, just thinking, well, what about all those? Just even at a young age, what about those who are left behind?
Mhm.
And so to be able to be selected on this team to go back to Korea
Mhm.
for the Korean War was just not only a childhood um, honor, from
Mhm.
childhood, but it is to that day. And my stepfather actually, so my father served in Vietnam, my stepfather served in Korea.
Wow.
And so when I went back, he was very interested in, asking me, hey, did you, were you here? Did you do that? Man, I
Mhm.
was here during this time. So it really was a great connection, conduit to
Mhm.
not only my father, but my stepfather. And it was really kind of honoring to be able to speak into their lives of being,
Sure.
not I haven't been back to Vietnam, but I have been to North Korea to be able to talk to my
Yeah.
father in a different level,
Right.
which was pretty cool. Yeah, and that country is you don't know if you're ever going to leave. And I know that sounds kind of strange, but every day it was, don't do that or else, or else what? And I'm not the greatest ambassador. Boy, was I not the ambassador. I one story that I'm not afraid to say is we had a dig site and we were able to locate and find 21 sets of remains.
Mm.
And we were able to bring those home and repatriate
Wow.
those to their families, years after the Korean War was
That is
over.
incredible.
Right. So just a fast story, and I'll try to speed it up,
No,
but
you're good.
um, about I don't know how close we were. Probably 2 weeks into a 28-day or 30-day rotation there.
Mhm.
And we get this message that we're going to have a retired two-star general, a light colonel, or three dependents of Korean War MIA, kind of an entourage come over.
Okay.
And so it was like, oh man, okay, we got this. Well, when you fly in, it's the safest airline in the world. When we landed, we came down and touched down, and the right wheel grabbed, and bird, bird, bird. And it's kind of a funny story. It's like almost like a Saturday Night Light skit, because as we first get on the aircraft, close the doors, and in Korean they say, "Hey, we're getting ready to take off."
Yeah.
And then as they shut the door, all you heard was all these big lighters going off. The cabin fills up with smoke. Now we haven't smoked,
And
since
and
into
yeah,
the
in
late
airplanes for a long
70s, late
time. Yeah.
70s. Uh, so this cabin fills up with smoke. I'm up in the front seat. I'm choking, and then they have the flight attendant coming down, and she has an old medical cart, like from the 50s,
Okay.
and it has propaganda magazines, and then those little strawberry candies that your grandmother used to have. They would have a little stack of these, and they'd push it down the hallway, skit, 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 and one magazine, one candy. You pass it all the way down, and when we landed, the right rear tire boop, boop, caught on fire because the
That's not
brake.
cool.
No, it's not cool at all. Because as you're looking out the window and you see all these 1950s power wagon fire trucks that were either captured or left behind during the Korean War
Yeah.
are coming down behind you, and putting this fire out, and then you get off and they take you into the terminal, and then you get your baggage and all that. Well, so we get there, and this entourage comes in, or this party of retired military and the national. I think at that time she was the national spokesman for family members of missing in action
Hmm.
representative. And so when they get there, they have to go into this tiny booth, and
Hmm.
basically they walk into the booth and they put these two bars in.
Hmm.
So you're standing in between the two bars. You can't get out very fast, basically. And so I'm seeing, and she is just crying. I mean, just, emotional,
Hmm.
She lost her father when she was a little girl. She's part of the delegation going back over to see if they can find him and continue on the talks and with these people. And so I'm sitting there and I go, well, you know what? I want to make him feel better. You know? And I look over and there's this cart over here and it's got these flowers. There you go. So I go over and I get these two bouquets of flowers and I give them some RBN or their North Korean money. So she comes through the chute and I say, on behalf of the U.S. military liaison teams that's here in North Korea, I'd like to welcome you with open arms. Welcome, and give her a
Hmm.
hug and give her the flowers. Well, the general comes through, and our major, who is from the University of Tennessee.
Come on, go
Yep,
Vols.
he was from the University of Tennessee. What was his name? Major Norton was his name, and Major Norton was a graduate of the animal farm, I guess it is. Where they do all
Okay.
the decomposing bodies
Yeah.
and everything. He came around the corner, and the look on his face was he was angry at me, and I
Okay.
just couldn't understand it. So everybody else had got there. We got their baggage, and so there was a motorcade there ready for them, and we put them in. He says, "Get those flowers away from those ladies right now." And I'm like, "Okay." So ladies, hey, let me have your flowers. We'll make sure they get into your hotel room. We'll just get you there and get you, we have a meal waiting for you, those kind of things. And they shut the door and they left out. And I said, "What's the deal with the flowers?" He says, "Anybody who leaves North Korea, when they like if they go to China or Russia, when they come back, they have to buy those flowers and take them to Kim Jong Il's grave and swear an allegiance back to the great emperor."
Oh,
Right.
man.
So I'm sitting there going, okay. So I walk back over and put them back into the two little holes that are missing. And like, "No, you must take." I was like, "Yeah, I don't have to do anything." Again, I'm not the best ambassador.
Man, that is a great story.
Yeah, right.
Man, so you basically took these flowers that should have been going to the grave of this
Right. The leader, the supreme leader.
man.
Right.
That is wild.
But while we were there, we really got to see a lot of pretty phenomenal places. They have the Children's Palace, and
Mhm.
in the Children's Palace, they just have these kids that they see that they have a talent,
Hmm.
and then they just they really exploit it. It's
Mhm.
kind of sad because it's like the Disneyland. It's a
Mhm.
small world. All the kids doing the same move. It's the
Mhm.
same thing. But whatever their talent is, whether they're pianist or whether gymnast or acrobatics,
Mhm.
um, there was one exhibit where they were sewing with silk,
Hmm.
and so one of the national, um, uh, I guess, paintings is running horses,
Hmm.
or the maiden on the Potagon River runs right through
Mhm.
Pyongyang, and it's just this beautiful. But it was a screen that you would put in a room,
Mhm.
to see the
Yeah.
partition off a room. It was really, really pretty nice, but just beautiful things. And then they had their war museum, and I was really extremely interested in there. And so we went there. They had parts from the Pueblo.
Hmm.
So if you know history, they had Major General Walker. I think it was a Major General. Yeah, Major General Walker's boots, helmet, and jeep. He was captured. And then they had just all kinds of ID tags and all that. And I took a lot of pictures of those kind of things.
Really?
Yeah, they had standards from units that had
Hmm.
been overrun.
Yeah.
And then they had books. And so I purchased several books from there.
Wow.
And it was really quite alarming of the propaganda,
Hmm.
American imperialist and American air pirates, and
Mm.
just kind of their vernacular was really kind of alarming. Obviously, it's
Hmm.
like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
But it was kind of it was eye opening. I thought,
Yeah. So, how old were you when you went to North Korea?
oh, that is a good question. Um, so probably 30, maybe
Okay.
maybe 30 years old. I think.
So, did they watch you guys like hawks when you were over there? Did they give you like this North Korean, diplomat that's telling you what you can take pictures of, what you can't take pictures of,
Yeah.
or what you can and cannot
Yeah, they were
do?
from the Ministry of Tourism.
Oh, okay.
Yes, yes.
They have a
Min
tourism
Oh, yeah,
department.
absolutely, yeah. So, it
Huh.
was Mr. Kim and Mr. Kim and Mr. Kim, um, and I know it's almost like humorous,
Yeah.
but it was true. They're all Mr. Kim, and so I told them, "Well, my name is Mr. Smith." So there.
Yeah.
Um, but a funny story from that is that so I had to, because I was a communication guy, I was not on the dig site all the time.
Okay.
So I stayed back in what they call the Potagon Hotel, which is right there on the river. Um, and so, I was given the instructions, you can run from here to the bridgie. That's it. That's all you can run. And it was probably a mile and a half down and mile and a half back.
Mhm.
But I had to let them know when I was going to run. So I told them, okay, well, every day at 6 a.m. That's when I'm running. If it's foul weather, then I'm not going to run. Well, that's
Mhm.
when I say foul weather, it has to be sleeting, snowing. It's so. But about every 25 meters, there was a park bench,
Okay.
and they're all dressed the same. They all look like UPS drivers. They had the brown jacket, members only jacket,
Hmm.
brown pants, blue kids, and sitting at attention. And they were perfectly aligned. It's like somebody went out there with a laser and shot it, and it went all the way through all their ears. And they're all sitting there. And so when I ran by, again, I'm not the greatest ambassador, but I'd go, "Good morning, Ping. Hello, Pong. Hello, Ding. Hello, Dong." not, not probably not the best thing to do, but for me, because I wasn't able to talk to anybody else, that was how I did it. So
These
about
people are just sitting on park
they're just
benches.
sitting on park benches at the position of attention, watching me, because on this side there was the river. So what they were doing was making sure I wasn't meeting with anybody,
Okay.
if nobody was passing me information, those kind of things. And
That
so
is
I was running one day and I'm like, I wonder if I can run past the bridge.
oh.
Why not try? Good Lord Almighty. I got underneath that bridge and I picked up the pace and I kept on running like I was going to go somewhere. And I mean, it was like a goon squad from the Wizard of Oz. We represent the Lollipop Kids. Because, I'm 6 foot. Well, everyone there was about this tall. And they
Mhm.
rush out. No, no, no go farther than Bridgie. No go farther.
Mhm.
And so I said, okay, well, I guess that answers my question. I can't go any farther than the bridge. They had a small rugby team there to pull
Yeah.
me back. So I turned around and laughed about it and ran on back. And the next day, obviously, the one of the ministers, not ministers, but one of the head guys from
Yeah.
the tourism Department of Tourism paid me a visit and said, please don't
Don't do that again.
don't do that again. Don't overstay your
You're
welcome.
welcome. Yeah.
Right,
So
right.
you were in North Korea for about 30 days.
Yeah,
Correct.
28 days. Yeah.
Man, that is so crazy.
It was almost surreal because everyone walked around like I was a giraffe.
Mm.
A giraffe in the middle of, the
Yeah.
middle of the desert.
Yeah.
Wow, that's strange. And it really, you really kind of stuck out like a
Yeah.
sore thumb.
Yeah.
but very rewarding because even there, my driver, Mr. Kim, they always had to have two in the car,
Mm.
and so they would ask me questions, and again, it was that cat and mouse game.
Yeah.
Are you married? Well, why are you married? That
Mm.
kind of thing. And they wanted me to give them information on how they could um, use their outhouse
Mhm.
to produce energy.
Huh.
And so, and I know that they were beating around or trying to, or didn't really understand methane.
Okay.
How methane gas and how it can be used, but that was the topic of most of our conversations. Was you draw me the plans for this because I know you know. So I drew them an outhouse with a moon in it, and you got to have the moon because if the moon is not there, um, and
That
it,
just shows you how cut off from
oh
the rest
yeah,
of the world they are.
right. Well, one of the things is we went to another one of the palace of technology,
Okay.
and they had a picture of the space shuttle on it, but it had North Korean markings on it. And I kind
Huh.
of sat there and looked for a second, and I went, "Huh." And he goes, "Oh, you didn't know about our space program?" I said, "Crazy. You guys have kept that pretty well under wraps." And it was. I mean, there was no. I don't want to say sarcasm.
Sure.
They were like, "Yeah, we got a space." But no, it's like, "Yes, we have a space program. Don't you haven't heard
Like,
about it?" Yeah,
yeah,
I mean, there was
surprising that you haven't heard about it
exactly, exactly.
because they're just being told through
Oh,
their government
absolutely,
what is
absolutely.
fact, and most of everything is North Koreans done it, right?
Right.
They were probably the first ones to do it, and
First one's on the moon.
right.
And if you only have one source of information, that's the information that you know.
That's very true.
Yeah. So